Um, I would like to invite Ms. Beatrice Kaldun, Head of the Office and UNESCO Representative, Bangladesh, our guest of honor, to deliver her speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister Dr. Deepo Moni, MP, Ministry of Education, who has joined us briefly, Deputy Minister Mr. Mohibul Hassan Chowdhury, Minister of Education, who I believe will join us very shortly, respected Chair Professor Umesh Sharma, Associate Dean of Monash University, Faculty of Education, Australia, Professor M.D. Mashir Zaman, Chairman, National Curriculum and Textbook Board, Ministry of Education, People's Republic of Bangladesh, Professor Tariq Ahsan, Member Secretary of the Conference, representatives from education ministries, NGOs, INGOs, UN agencies, universities, including experts, researchers, academics, and media colleagues from Bangladesh and other, I believe, 16 countries. Distinguished guests, presenters, and participants. Assalamu alaikum and a good afternoon to you all. On behalf of UNESCO, I am honored to be here today at the closing session of the 6th International Conference on Equity and Inclusion in Education under the theme of a system without discrimination, redefining education in the context of the 21st century. I believe that this conference has provided opportunities for educators and a whole range of stakeholders from all 17 participating countries to share your views and the way forward for reimagining education and enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in education. As we know, the conference is organized very timely when our world is at a turning point. Global disparities and the pressing need to reimagine why, how, what, where, and when we learn means that education is not yet fulfilling its promise to help us shape peaceful, just, and sustainable futures. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, 20% of children and young people at a global level faced exclusion from education on a daily basis, which has been exacerbated during the pandemic with a hard hit on the low and lower middle income countries. UNESCO's Futures of Education report, entitled Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education, has made proposals in renewing education with emphasis on pedagogies of cooperation and solidarity, curricula and the evolving knowledge commons, the transformative work of teachers, safeguarding and transforming schools, and education across different times and spaces. Inclusion and equity are the overarching principles in the course to guide our collective work to reimagine and govern education. The world has committed to inclusive education, not by chance, but because it is the foundation of an education system of good quality that enables every child, youth, and adult to learn and fulfill their potential. Ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO and my office, the office in Dhaka, has been supporting the government of Bangladesh in fulfilling its commitment to SDG 4, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. During the pandemic, UNESCO has also supported the development and deployment of radio-based learning programs to ensure learning continuity for the hardest to reach learners. UNESCO, through my office, we have advocated for inclusion and equity in education and supported the process in integrating inclusion and equity issues, as well as the global citizenship education and the education for sustainable development in the education sector plan of Bangladesh, in the SDG 4 strategic framework of Bangladesh, and the new curriculum. UNESCO and the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, that many of you will be aware of, have attached great importance to monitor inclusion and equity in education for evidence-based policy and practice towards achieving SDG 4 in Bangladesh and at the global level. Data are collected and reported with disaggregation by gender, ethnicity, disability to location, and so on. And among the 7 SDG 4 benchmark indicators, one indicator, namely completion rate at the upper secondary level by gender, dedicates itself to monitor equity in education. So Bangladesh is part of the global SDG 4 benchmarks in practice, which I think is excellent. The results will be disseminated at the Transforming Education Summit during the 77th UN General Assembly with the participation of head of states and governments. And of course, Bangladesh is included and involved. UNESCO has also supported the organization of the International Conference on Equity and Inclusion since 2015, and we are proud that we could serve as a network and a platform for collaborative research, policy advice, knowledge production, and sharing, as well as advocacy for inclusive and equitable education. The outcome of this 6th conference can help inform inclusive and equitable education policy and practice in Bangladesh, and can also support Bangladesh to play a critical role in shaping the regional and global education agenda, which can be done through the participation in the 2nd Asia-Pacific Regional Education Ministers Conference that will be held shortly in June in Bangkok, in short called UPREMC 2, and at the Transforming Education Summit, TES, in its capacity as a member of the Global SDG 4 High-Level Steering Committee to represent Asia and the Pacific. So it goes beyond Bangladesh. So I think there's an important role that Bangladesh is also playing in the regional and global level. Distinguished guests and participants, to conclude, I would like to draw your attention to 10 recommendations made in the Global Education Monitoring Report 2020 on inclusion, which resonates with many discussions and conclusions of this important conference. So let me quickly share with you these 10 recommendations. Recommendation 1, widen the understanding of inclusive education. So it should include all learners, regardless of identity, background, or ability. Recommendation 2, target financing to those left behind. So there's no inclusion while millions lack access to education. Recommendation 3, share expertise and resources. This is the only way to sustain a transition to inclusion. Recommendation 4, engage in meaningful consultation with communities and parents. Inclusion cannot be enforced only from above. Recommendation 5, ensure cooperation across government departments, sectors, and tiers. Inclusion in education is but a subset of social inclusion. Recommendation 6, make space for non-government actors to challenge and fill gaps, as they must also make sure they work towards the same inclusion goal. Recommendation 7, apply universal design, means ensure inclusive systems fulfill every learner's potential. Recommendation 8, prepare, empower, and motivate the education workforce. So all teachers actually should be prepared to teach all students. And then recommendation 9, collect data on and for inclusion with attention and respect, and avoid stigmatizing labeling. And the final recommendation 10, learn from peers, which means a shift to inclusion is not very easy. So ladies and gentlemen, let us work together to strengthen the relationships and nurture an endeavor that is close to all our hearts in caring for our learners and their education. I hope that all of us have had a wonderful and rewarding experience at this conference, featuring, I believe, 80 different papers based on projects, programs, and research, and covering 8 thematic areas and suggesting many ways to move forward for teachers, planners, practitioners, managers, and policymakers in taking initiatives to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we can see with the presence here in the concluding ceremony of both the Minister of Education and your Deputy Minister of Education, the high interest they put on these conclusions and findings of this conference and how this can be turned into practice and or policy. So our sincere thanks to the organizing and contributing partners, and especially, of course, the overall organizing partner and organizer of this first to sixth International Conference on Equity and Inclusion Education, the Asian Center for Inclusive Education, and for all their partners and speakers and contributors and all the participants for your strong roles in collaboration in making this conference happen and having useful and good conclusions. So I hope the Inclusive Education Network will continue its efforts for inclusive and equitable quality education in Bangladesh, in the region and at the global level. And of course, I assure you of UNESCO's continued support. Thank you very much, Donabhat.